It was a quiet Friday night downtown, the kind of night when the city slowed just enough to feel almost peaceful. A few taxis idled at the curb, their headlights cutting across empty sidewalks. Main Street Café glowed warm against the chill. A pocket of light and comfort in a city that never really slept. Before we begin, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the stories that matter most. Tonight's story isn't just about coffee or a cop or a courtroom. It's about power, prejudice, and the price of silence. Let's step inside the café. Inside, soft jazz drifted over the hiss of steaming milk. Cups clinked, laptops clicked, couples whispered over pastries. Students hunched in corners, nursing cheap refills. Safe, predictable, ordinary. Marcus Ellison stepped in wearing a gray overcoat, tie loosened after a long day. He slid into a corner seat by the window, where the streetlight cast broken shadows across the tiled floor. He ordered a cappuccino, checked a couple emails, and let himself breathe. Just a man, a cup of coffee, a brief pause in a life that never seemed to stop. And then everything broke. Hands where I can see them. Now, the voice cracked like a gunshot. Chairs scraped. Someone dropped a cup. Jazz sputtered under the weight of silence. Marcus turned. The cappuccino slipped from his hand, smashing on the floor. And there it was, black steel, aimed dead. Center at his chest, a young cop stood there, uniform crisp, badge gleaming, gun shaking. Fresh out of the academy, by the look of him. His eyes burned with something between fear and arrogance, a rookie's desperation to be taken seriously. You. Black male, late 30s. You match the description of a robbery suspect. The cafe froze. Conversations died. Every head swiveled toward the gun. Phones rose quietly into trembling hands. Marcus lifted his arms slowly, palms out. Calm on the surface, boiling underneath. I'm a lawyer, he said evenly. I came in for coffee. The officer's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened on the grip. He wanted fear, submission. What he got instead was composure. ID, the cop barked. Show it. Now. Marcus didn't flinch. His voice carried. Steal. Not without probable cause. You know the law. The air thickened. A barista crouched behind the counter, whispering a prayer. A young woman pressed against the window, hands over her mouth. An older man raised his phone higher, recording every second. The rookie's finger twitched on the trigger. He wasn't hearing words anymore. He wasn't seeing a man. He was seeing a problem. A black man standing tall was enough to set him off. Marcus's pulse slowed. He'd faced cartel bosses, mobsters with real blood on their hands. He'd stood in courtrooms with killers who wanted him dead. But this was different. This was supposed to be safe. This wasn't about law. It was about ego. About fear. About power in the wrong hands. He inhaled once, slow and steady. Then he reached, not for his wallet. For his phone. Don't move, the cop yelled, voice cracking. But Marcus's hand didn't stop. He picked up the phone, eyes locked on the gun, thumb pressing a familiar contact. You want ID? He said calmly. I'll show you another kind. The phone rang. Once, twice. Then a voice cut sharp through the silence. Ellison. What's wrong? Marcus tapped speaker. His tone didn't waver. I'm at Main Street Café. One of your officers just pulled a gun on me, the cafe gasped. A barista dropped a cup that rolled across the floor. The line went quiet. Then thundered. What? Stay where you are. Don't move. I'm on my way. The name rippled through the crowd like a spark through dry grass. District Attorney Rachel Kane. The rookie's face drained of color. Sweat streaked his temple. His grip faltered. You called the DA. He SDM around them, whispers. Rows, phones filmed, voices spread the truth. He called the D. That's Marcus Ellison. I've seen him on the news. 5 minutes felt like an eternity. And then the door slammed open. Rachel Kane stormed inside, coat whipping behind her, eyes blazing like fire. She wasn't in court. She didn't need to be. Power radiated from her like heat. "Officer Cole," her voice snapped through the café. "Drop it. Now." The rookie hesitated, gun trembling. I thought he was..." "Enough," Rachel cut him off, sharp as a gavel. "No report. No probable cause. Just bias. The man in front of you is Assistant U.S. Attorney Marcus Ellison, my right hand." The café shifted. Power flipped. Cole shrank, knees threatening to buckle. "Badge, weapon, hand them over." He fumbled, unclipped his holster, laid his gun and badge on the table like broken relics. Rachel's voice didn't soften. "You disgraced the uniform. And you pointed a loaded weapon at the law itself. Your career ends tonight." The room went silent. Cole stood frozen, face pale, lips trembling. Every phone recorded, every angle captured his downfall. And in that silence, Marcus didn't move. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just stood tall, hands finally lowering as justice shifted in the room. Cole's hands shook as he placed his gun and badge on the table. The weight of it landed with a dull thud that seemed to echo across the café. No one moved. No one breathed. Dozens of eyes fixed on the young cop, watching his downfall in real time. Rachel Kane didn't blink. She stood rooted, her presence swallowing the room whole. "Sit down," she ordered. Her voice left no space for defiance. Cole dropped into the nearest chair, pale as chalk, sweat soaking through his uniform. The gun looked foreign on the table now, stripped of the authority he thought it carried. Around him, the café began to stir. Phones still pointed. People whispered. A college kid muttered, "He almost shot a federal prosecutor over coffee." His friend replied, "He didn't care who he was. Just saw a black man and pulled the trigger." Rachel turned her gaze back to Marcus. "Are you all right?" Marcus finally lowered his arms, flexing his stiff shoulders. His voice was low but steady. "I'm fine. But it could have gone another way." She nodded, eyes flicking toward Cole. It almost did. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Backup arriving late, as always. Within minutes, 2 more squad cars pulled up, red and blue lights flooding through the café windows. Officers spilled in, hands on holsters, then froze as they saw the scene. Their district attorney standing tall, their rookie stripped bare. "Secure his weapon," Rachel commanded, pointing at the table. One of the officers obeyed immediately, snapping on gloves, bagging the gun and badge. Cole tried to speak, his voice cracking. This isn't fair." Rachel's eyes burned through him. "You pointed a loaded weapon at an innocent man without cause. You're lucky fairness is all you're getting tonight." The other officers didn't look at Cole. They looked at Marcus. Recognition dawned in their eyes. Whispers passed between them. Assistant U.S. Attorney Ellison. Suddenly the power dynamic shifted entirely. Marcus wasn't just a man with his hands up anymore. He was the law. Cole slumped forward, head in his hands. His career had unraveled in less than 20 minutes. Rachel turned back to Marcus. "Come with me. You'll give a statement downtown." Marcus nodded once, grabbed his coat, and followed her out. The crowd parted, some murmuring thank you, others just staring in silence. Phones stayed high, still recording, catching every step. Outside, the cold night air hit like a slap. The street was alive now. Neighbors had spilled out, lured by sirens and flashing lights. They asked questions, held up their own cameras. What happened in there? Is he really FBI? No, he's a federal prosecutor. Did the cop pull a gun on him? Marcus didn't answer. He slid into the back of Rachel's car. Silence heavy in the air. The drive to the precinct was short, but the quiet stretched. Finally, Rachel broke it. "You know this'll blow up. Every clip will hit social media within the hour." Marcus stared out the window. "Good, maybe it should. She glanced at him. You want this public? I don't need it for me. But how many others don't get this ending? How many don't have your number on speed dial? His tone hardened. If this makes even one rookie think twice, then yes, I want it public. Rachel's hands tightened on the wheel. She didn't. Argue. At the precinct, Internal Affairs was already waiting. The Café footage had been uploaded and spread faster than wildfire. Screens glowed in every office, replaying the scene from a dozen angles. Cole's face, young, panicked, reckless, was frozen mid-frame, gun out, sweat shining. They ushered Marcus into an interview room. A detective with gray hair and tired eyes offered him water, asked for his account. Marcus told it straight, voice even, no embellishments. He didn't need to add drama, the truth was dramatic enough. When he finished, the detective leaned back, sighing. Jesus, he didn't even have a report to lean on, just bias. Marcus didn't respond. He stared at his own hands on the table, flexing them slowly. He could still feel the tremor of adrenaline in his veins. He'd been seconds away from becoming another headline. Meanwhile, down the hall, Cole sat in another room, eyes red, fingers laced, rocking slightly. Internal Affairs hammered him with questions. His answers fell apart, excuse after excuse crumbling under the weight of video evidence. I thought he matched the description. I was just being cautious. But the footage told the truth. He hadn't been cautious. He'd been reckless, dangerous. And now, exposed. By midnight, the decision was made. Cole was suspended effective immediately. By morning, the department would announce his termination. Rachel met Marcus in the hallway, her face tight with anger she hadn't released. It's over for him, she said. Fired, likely stripped of his certification. Marcus gave a short nod. Good. But as they stepped outside into the cold night again, Marcus's chest ached with something heavier than victory. He knew the truth. He had survived not because the system worked, but because he had power. He had connections. A title. A phone call away from the DA. He thought of names, people of color who hadn't had those lifelines. Men who hadn't walked away from a rookie's gun. Names that had become hashtags, murals, marchers. He stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the city lights. Rachel touched his arm. What is it? Marcus's voice was low. I walked out alive because of who I am. Not everyone gets that. Rachel's eyes softened, just a fraction. Then maybe it's time we make sure they do. For a long moment, neither spoke. Cars rolled past, horns blaring, life resuming around them. But Marcus knew his own life had shifted. He hadn't just been threatened in a cafe. He'd seen the system naked, its flaws laid bare. And he couldn't unsee it. He walked away into the night, coat pulled tight, step steady. Not a victim, not a victor, but a man carrying proof. Proof that silence was surrender. Proof that unchecked power was a loaded gun, and proof that justice only mattered if it was demanded loud, unrelenting, public. By morning, the city knew. The video spread like gasoline catching flame. A dozen different angles, shaky phone footage, captions added in bold letters. Rookie cop pulls gun on federal prosecutor. Clips hit Twitter, TikTok, the late-night news cycle. Every outlet ran it, every headline screaming the same truth. 1 second Marcus Ellison was sipping coffee. The next he was staring down a Glock. News vans parked outside Main Street Café before the sun came up. Reporters crowded the sidewalk, shouting into cameras, voices urgent. Customers who had been there the night before stood in small groups, giving interviews, replaying their trauma for strangers. He just walked in, pulled his gun, didn't even ask questions. Marcus stayed calm. Honestly, if he'd flinched, we'd be talking about a funeral right now. That rookie, he was shaking. You could see it. He wasn't in control. By mid-morning, hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag coffee shop standoff. Hashtag justice for Marcus. Silence is not an option. Marcus sat in his apartment, curtains drawn, TV muted but still running the endless loops of his own face. Every channel, every feed, his name plastered in headlines. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion already sinking in. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. But the world had chosen him anyway. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Colleagues, friends, strangers. Some messages supportive, others demanding interviews, a few laced with venom. You think you're special because you're a Fed? What about the rest of us? He scrolled, jaw tightening. The criticism cut sharper than the praise, because they were right. He had survived because of privilege, because of proximity to power. That was the bitter truth. A knock sounded at his door. He opened it to find Rachel Kane, looking more worn than usual but still sharp. She stepped inside, tossing her coat over a chair. They're already calling for a press conference, she said without preamble. The mayor's office, civil rights groups, even the governor wants a statement. Marcus sank into a chair. And what do you want me to say? The truth. He laughed bitterly. The truth? That I'm alive because I had your number? That if I'd been anyone else, I'd be dead? Rachel met his gaze. Exactly that. He studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Hours later he stood behind a podium at City Hall, cameras flashing like gunfire. The room buzzed with reporters, microphones thrust forward. Rachel stood beside him, silent but solid. Marcus leaned into the mic. His voice carried steady, controlled. What happened to me should never have happened. I walked into a cafe to drink coffee. I left in handcuffs of fear, staring down the barrel of a gun, not because I broke the law, but because someone decided I didn't belong. Cameras clicked furiously. Reporters scribbled. I am alive today because I had power, because I had someone to call. But thousands of others don't. They don't have a district attorney on speed dial. They don't have titles that force hesitation. And too often, they don't walk away. A murmur swept through the room. Marcus's voice hardened. This is not about me. It's about everyone who can't tell their story because their story ended on a sidewalk, in a traffic stop, in a convenience store. We cannot pretend this was an isolated mistake. We cannot stay silent, because silence is surrender. And I will not surrender. The press erupted, questions flying. Do you plan to sue? Do you believe race played a factor? Should Officer Cole face charges? Marcus raised a hand, silencing the room. The footage answers those questions. Internal Affairs has acted. Justice is in motion. But the bigger fight, the one against bias, against fear disguised as authority, that fight is just beginning. He stepped back. Rachel escorted him out as the room buzzed like a hive. That night, the speech played on every network. Commentators debated his words, some praising, others scoffing. On social media, clips of his line, "Silence is surrender," circulated with fiery captions. Memes appeared. Protest signs were painted overnight. By the weekend, crowds gathered outside the precinct, chanting for reform, holding Marcus's name as both shield and weapon. He watched from his apartment window as helicopters hovered overhead. Friends called. Some congratulated him, others warned him. Careful, Marcus. You've become the face of something bigger now. He knew they were right. The weight of it pressed on his chest, heavy, suffocating. He hadn't chosen this role. But walking away wasn't an option anymore. Meanwhile, Cole's world collapsed. Paparazzi camped outside his parents' house. Former classmates posted old photos of him online, dissecting every detail of his life. His name became synonymous with bias, with failure. Anonymous threats flooded his family's mailbox. His father told a local reporter, "He made a mistake, but he's not a monster." Marcus read that quote and felt no satisfaction. Only a gnawing ache. Because Cole had pulled the trigger in his mind long before his finger touched it. The only thing that stopped him was luck and power. Late one night, Marcus sat alone in his kitchen, the city buzzing outside. His phone buzzed with another call. This one from his sister. "You okay?" She asked softly. "I'm breathing," he replied. "That's more than some get." Her words cut deep. He closed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "I don't know if I want to be the symbol they're making me into," he admitted. "You don't get to choose, Marcus," she said. "But you do get to choose what you do with it." The call ended. Marcus sat in silence, staring at his reflection in the window. A man who wanted nothing more than a quiet cup of coffee, now thrust into a storm that wouldn't end soon, and somewhere in the city, chants echoed, "Justice now. Silence no more." The protest started small. Dozens stood outside the precinct with cardboard signs, chanting for reform. By the weekend, it was hundreds. By the following week, thousands filled the streets, their voices rising like a wave crashing. Against City Hall, "Justice now. Silence is surrender." Ellison stood tall. "We stand with him." Helicopters circled overhead. News choppers broadcast sweeping shots of packed avenues, crowds stretching for blocks, banners flapping. In the cold wind, the city hadn't seen unrest like this in years. Marcus watched from his office window at the federal courthouse, the chants echoing faintly through the glass. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't organized it. But somehow his name, his face, his words, "Silence is surrender," had become the movement's rallying cry. His assistant poked her head in. "CNN wants an interview. So does PBS. And there's a request from Congress." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Congress? They want you to testify at a Judiciary Committee hearing next week. Police accountability." He leaned back, exhaling. Slowly, "Of course they do." That night, he sat across from Rachel Kane in her office. Stacks of files littered her desk, but her attention was fixed on him. "They're going to put you on the stand in D.C., she said. "You'll be asked about coal, about bias, about systemic failure." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm a prosecutor, Rachel. I deal in cases, not speeches." "Not anymore," she said firmly. "You're not just a prosecutor now. You're the man who survived, the man who spoke up. You represent everyone who didn't walk away." He stared at her, the weight pressing down harder. "And what if I fail them?" Her eyes softened. "Then at least you tried. That's more than most ever get to do." Meanwhile, Cole lived a different reality. His name had become poison. He couldn't walk into a grocery store without whispers. Couldn't check his phone without seeing his own face memed, mocked, dissected. Job offers evaporated. Friends stopped calling. One night, he sat alone in his dark apartment, the TV casting his face back at him. A panel of commentators debated his name like it was a chess piece. Rookie officer unfit for duty. Symptom of a bigger problem. Should face charges. He whispered to the empty room. "I was just trying to do my job." His voice cracked. "I was just trying to be careful." But even he didn't believe it anymore. The day of the hearing arrived. Marcus walked into the grand chamber of Congress, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. He took his seat. At the witness table, a nameplate gleaming before him, the chairman banged the gavel. "This committee will come to order. Today we address the issue of police accountability, bias, and public trust. Mr. Ellison, thank you for your presence." Marcus leaned forward, voice steady, but the weight of millions watching pressed on every word. "I never imagined I'd be here like this. I never imagined that ordering a cup of coffee could end with a gun in my face. But that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't because I broke the law. It was because I was seen as a threat before I was seen as a man." The chamber hushed. Lawmakers scribbled notes. Cameras zoomed closer. "I walked away alive because I had power. Because I had someone to call. But too many others don't. Too many others never get to stand here. Their names are hashtags, murals, eulogies. That is the failure of the system." And unless we face it, unless we change it, it will happen again. Questions followed, some supportive, others skeptical. A congressman asked, "Mr. Ellison, are you suggesting this rookie officer is the face of all systemic bias?" Marcus met his gaze. "I'm suggesting he's a symptom. The disease is bigger. The disease is fear plus authority plus prejudice. And it will not heal itself." Applause rippled from the audience. The chairman struck the gavel again, but even he couldn't silence it. Afterward, outside on the Capitol steps, reporters swarmed, microphones shoved in his face. "Mr. Ellison, what reforms do you want? Do you think Cole should be jailed? Are you considering a run for office?" Marcus forced his way through the chaos, ignoring most questions. But one lingered in his mind. Run for office. Was that what people wanted from him now? Was he more useful as a politician than a prosecutor? That night, his sister called again. "You were powerful today," she said. "You looked like you belonged there." He sighed. "I belong in a courtroom, not in politics." "You belong wherever people need your voice," she replied. Back in his apartment, Marcus stood by the window, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. His reflection looked back tired, hardened, but unbroken. He realized he was standing at a crossroads he never asked for. Stay in the law, quiet, steady. Or step into the storm, louder, riskier, but maybe necessary. Across town, Cole sat in a lawyer's office, facing charges now pending: negligence, abuse of authority. He stared at the paperwork, his signature trembling on the page. His attorney leaned in. "You can fight this and drag it out, or you can take the deal. Resign. Permanently. Forfeit your pension. Walk away without prison." Cole whispered, "And what then? What's left of me?" The lawyer had no answer. Marcus, meanwhile, lay awake in bed, replaying everything. The café, the gun, the silence. Rachel's face, the chance outside. The questions in Congress. One phrase circled endlessly in his head: silence is surrender. He knew then he had no choice, not if he wanted change. Not if he wanted survival to mean more than luck, because the gun was never just pointed at him. It was pointed at everyone who looked like him, lived like him, walked into cafes expecting coffee, but getting suspicion instead. And if he stayed silent now, he'd be surrendering too. The protest started small. Dozens stood outside the precinct with cardboard signs, chanting for reform. By the weekend, it was hundreds. By the following week, thousands filled the streets, their voices rising like a wave crashing against City Hall. Justice now. Silence is surrender. Ellison stood tall. We stand with him. Helicopters circled overhead. News choppers broadcast sweeping shots of packed avenues, crowds stretching for blocks, banners flapping in the cold wind. The city hadn't seen unrest like this in years. Marcus watched from his office window at the federal courthouse, the chants echoing faintly through the glass. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't organized it. But somehow his name, his face, his words, "silence is surrender," had become the movement's rallying cry. His assistant poked her head in. "CNN wants an interview. So does PBS. And there's a request from Congress." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Congress? They want you to testify at a Judiciary Committee hearing next week. Police accountability." He leaned back, exhaling. Slowly, "Of course they do." That night, he sat across from Rachel Kane in her office. Stacks of files littered her desk, but her attention was fixed on him. "They're going to put you on the stand in D.C., she said. "You'll be asked about Cole, about bias, about systemic failure." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm a prosecutor, Rachel. I deal in cases, not speeches." "Not anymore," she said firmly. "You're not just a prosecutor now. You're the man who survived, the man who spoke up. You represent everyone who didn't walk away." He stared at her, the weight pressing down harder. "And what if I fail them?" Her eyes softened. Then at least you tried. That's more than most ever get to do. Meanwhile, Cole lived a different reality. His name had become poison. He couldn't walk into a grocery store without whispers. Couldn't check his phone without seeing his own face memed, mocked, dissected. Job offers evaporated. Friends stopped calling. One night, he sat alone in his dark apartment, the TV casting his face back at him. A panel of commentators debated his name like it was a chess piece. Rookie officer unfit for duty, symptom of a bigger problem, should face charges. He whispered to the empty room, "I was just trying to do my job." His voice cracked. "I was just trying to be careful." But even he didn't believe it anymore. The day of the hearing arrived. Marcus walked into the grand chamber of Congress, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. He took his seat at the witness table, a nameplate gleaming before him. Chairman banged the gavel. "This committee will come to order. Today we address the issue of police accountability, bias, and public trust. Mr. Ellison, thank you for your presence." Marcus leaned forward, voice steady, but the weight of millions watching pressed on every word. "I never imagined I'd be here like this. I never imagined that ordering a cup of coffee could end with a gun in my face. But that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't because I broke the law. It was because I was seen as a threat before I was seen as a man." The chamber hushed. Lawmakers scribbled notes. Cameras zoomed closer. "I walked away alive because I had power. Because I had someone to call. But too many others don't. Too many others never get to stand here. Their names are hashtags, murals, eulogies. That is the failure of the system. And unless we face it, unless we change it, it will happen again." Questions followed, some supportive, others skeptical. A congressman asked, "Mr. Ellison, are you suggesting this rookie officer is the face of all systemic bias?" Marcus met his gaze. "I'm suggesting he's a symptom. The disease is bigger. The disease is fear plus authority plus prejudice. And it will not heal itself." Applause rippled from the audience. The chairman struck the gavel again, but even he couldn't silence it. Afterward, outside on the Capitol steps, reporters swarmed, microphones shoved in his face. "Mr. Ellison, what reforms do you want? Do you think Cole should be jailed? Are you considering a run for office?" Marcus forced his way through the chaos, ignoring most questions. But one lingered in his mind: run for office. Was that what people wanted from him now? Was he more useful as a politician than a prosecutor? That night, his sister called again. "You were powerful today," she said. "You looked like you belonged there." He sighed. "I belong in a courtroom, not in politics." "You belong wherever people need your voice," she replied. Back in his apartment, Marcus stood by the window, the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. His reflection looked back tired, hardened, but unbroken. He realized he was standing at a crossroads he never asked for. Stay in the law, quiet, steady. Or step into the storm, louder, riskier, but maybe necessary. Across town, Cole sat in a lawyer's office, facing charges now pending: negligence, abuse of authority. He stared at the paperwork, his signature trembling on the page. His attorney leaned in. "You can fight this and drag it out, or you can take the deal. Resign permanently, forfeit your pension, walk away without prison." Cole whispered, "And what then? What's left of me?" The lawyer had no answer. Marcus, meanwhile, lay awake in bed, replaying everything: the café, the gun, the silence, Rachel's face, the chants outside, the questions in Congress. One phrase circled endlessly in his head: silence is surrender. He knew then he had no choice, not if he wanted change, not if he wanted survival to mean more than luck, because the gun was never just pointed at him. It was pointed at everyone who looked like him, lived like him, Walked into cafes expecting coffee, but getting suspicion instead. And if he stayed silent now, he'd be surrendering too. The backlash came fast. For every crowd that chanted his name, another corner of the country cursed it. On cable news, talking heads tore him apart. Ellison is exploiting his position. He's pushing a radical agenda. Another race-baiting prosecutor playing victim. Anonymous emails hit his inbox, some supportive, some laced with venom. We see you, you won't last long. Go back where you belong. Marcus ignored most of it until one night, a brick shattered his apartment window. Glass rained across the floor. Attached was a note, scrawled in thick marker, "Shut up or next time it's not glass." Rachel Kane was in his apartment within the hour, pacing while officers dusted for prints. "This isn't just noise anymore," she snapped. "They're coming." "After you." Marcus sat at the table staring at the note. His jaw clenched. "I guess I hit a nerve." "Don't joke about this," Rachel shot back. "You need protection. I don't want bodyguards trailing me." "You don't have a choice. You're a target now." The next day, federal marshals shadowed him everywhere. Suits in corners of the courtroom, unmarked SUVs idling outside his office. Every move scrutinized, every step monitored. He felt like a prisoner in his own life. At the same time, the protests grew louder. Crowds swelled in every major city, chanting his words, waving signs with his face. "Silence is surrender," painted in block letters across banners. He hadn't asked for it, but he had become the symbol of a movement that not everyone in the movement agreed. Some activists criticized him. Easy for Ellison to talk about justice when he had the DA on speed dial. Others demanded he go further, call for abolishing the police altogether, lead marchers, run for office. Caught between extremes, Marcus felt the ground shifting under his feet. One evening, he slipped into a church basement on the south side of the city. A community forum was underway, residents gathering to vent, to grieve, to demand answers. The room fell silent when he entered. An older woman spoke first. "Mr. Ellison, you're lucky. My grandson didn't get to walk away. He had no Rachel Kane to call. He's buried 6 blocks from here." Her words cut deep. Marcus swallowed hard. "I know," he said softly. "That's why I'm here, not as a prosecutor, just as a man who understands the cost." Another voice rose, sharp, a young man in the back. "So what are you gonna do about it? Stand on TV and give speeches? Or actually fight?" The room murmured, all eyes on him. Marcus hesitated, then answered, "I can't promise to fix everything. But I can promise I won't be silent, not anymore." The room erupted in applause. But Marcus felt the weight of a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Meanwhile, Cole sat in his parents' basement, curtains drawn, TV flickering. His face still dominated the news cycle, his mugshot, his shaky stance in the cafe, replayed endlessly. He hadn't left the house in days. Death threats poured into his family's mailbox. His father pleaded with him to apologize publicly, to beg for forgiveness, but Cole couldn't bring himself to face the cameras. He stared at the wall, muttering, "I was just trying to do my job." He repeated it like a prayer, but even he didn't believe it anymore. Back at the courthouse, Marcus worked late one night, stacks of files before him. He was mid-sentence on a brief when the lights flickered. A sound echoed in the hallway, heavy. Footsteps, too slow, too deliberate. He froze. The marshals had already left for the night. He wasn't supposed to need protection in the federal building. Then came the sound, metal against metal. A door creaking open. Marcus reached for his phone, dialed Rachel. She answered instantly. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "Where are you?" "Office, 9th floor. I'm on my way. Stay put." But Marcus couldn't stay still. He rose, moved toward the door, every muscle taut. His hand hovered near the handle when the footsteps souped. Silence. Then a voice, muffled. Through the door, male, low, cold. "You should have stayed quiet." His blood ran cold. He stumbled back, heart hammering. Rachel's voice screamed through the phone. "Marcus! Marcus!" The door rattled as if someone testing the lock. Then more silence. Heavy, suffocating. Minutes later, marshals stormed the hallway, weapons drawn. But the intruder was gone, no trace. Just the echo of a threat lingering in the air. Rachel arrived furious. "This isn't protest anymore. This is a direct threat on your life." Marcus sank into his chair, adrenaline still flooding his veins. "They want me silent." Rachel crouched in front of him, her voice iron. "Then you speak louder." The next morning, Marcus appeared on national television. Dark circles under his eyes, voice gravelly but firm. "I've been threatened, my home attacked, my life put in danger. But let me be clear, I will not be silent. Because silence is what they want, and silence is surrender." The clip went viral instantly. Supporters flooded the streets again, louder than before. His words spread across the nation like wildfire, etched onto signs, painted on walls. But in the shadows, his enemies whispered louder too. The attack came on a Monday night. Marcus had just finished a late meeting, walking out of the courthouse, under a sky smeared with rain. His two marshals trailed a few steps behind, eyes scanning the empty street. The air smelled of wet asphalt. The city hushed in that strange way just before something breaks. The SUV was waiting at the curb. Marcus reached for the handle when headlights flared from the corner. A black sedan screeched into view, windows down, muzzle flashes sparking in the dark. "Down!" one marshal shouted. Bullets cracked, glass shattered, sparks flew from concrete. Marcus was behind a pillar, heart pounding, ears ringing. The marshals returned fire, their pistols barking into the storm. Tires squealed, the sedan fishtailed, then disappeared into the night. Silence fell as suddenly as the chaos began. Marcus rose slowly, his breath ragged. His coat was shredded with holes, his briefcase lying in the gutter. One marshal was bleeding from the shoulder, clutching the wound with a grimace. Rachel arrived minutes later, sirens blaring behind her. She stormed across the scene, face pale with fury. "You could have been killed." Marcus steadied himself, brushing glass from his sleeve. "They missed. Not by much," she snapped. "This is war now." The story exploded across every network. Federal prosecutor targeted in drive-by shooting. Crowds swelled larger than ever, their chants rising to a roar that shook the city. The nation divided sharper than before, half demanding justice, half accusing Marcus of fueling unrest. That night, Marcus sat in his apartment, blinds drawn, the bullet holes in his briefcase on the table in front of him. He stared at them for a long time. Then he called his sister. "They tried to kill me," he said quietly. Her voice trembled. "Marcus, please stop. Please step back. It's not worth your life." He closed his eyes. "If I step back now, then what was any of this for?" Silence stretched between them. Finally she whispered, "Then promise me one thing, whatever path you take, make it count." The following week, Marcus returned to Congress not as a witness, but as the headline. Security was doubled. Metal detectors lined the halls. Protesters filled the steps outside, chanting his name, holding signs with his face painted in stark black and white. Inside, he sat before the Judiciary Committee once more. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Ellison, given the threats on your life, do you still stand by your words?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice steady though his hands still bore faint tremors. "I stand by them more than ever. Because the bullets weren't meant just for me. They were meant to silence a truth bigger than me. That truth is simple. Unchecked power is a loaded gun, and silence is surrender." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Cameras clicked furiously. His words thundered across the nation, carried instantly through every screen. Afterward, as he stepped outside, thousands roared his name. He looked out over the sea of faces, black, white, young, old, united in a way he had never imagined. For a moment, the fear receded. He felt the weight of something greater than survival. Rachel appeared. Beside him, her voice low enough only he could hear. "You could run, you know. Not just cases, office, higher, they'd follow you." He glanced at her, the idea hitting harder than the bullets had. "You think I should be a politician? I think you already are, whether you want it or not." He didn't answer. He just looked out over the crowd, their chants pounding like a heartbeat. That night, alone in his apartment, Marcus sat at his desk. He opened a blank page on his computer, fingers hovering over the keys. He thought of the café, of the muzzle aimed at his chest, of Rachel's voice thundering in the doorway. He thought of Cole, broken and disgraced. He thought of the brick through his window, the bullets that missed by inches. He thought of every name he knew who hadn't walked away, and then he began to type, not a legal brief, not a closing argument, a declaration, a manifesto, a promise. Hours passed, words flowed. When he finally leaned back, the sky outside had shifted from black to gray. Morning light crept through the blinds. He read the first line aloud, his voice steady, unshaken. "My name is Marcus Ellison. I am alive, and because I am alive, I will not be silent." The words would spread further than he imagined. Printed in newspapers, chanted in marshers, quoted in classrooms, etched into walls. Cole would fade into obscurity, his name remembered only as a cautionary tale. Rachel would continue her fight in the courts, her voice sharpened by the fire they had walked through together. And Marcus, whether he chose to run for office or remain a prosecutor, would never again walk into a cafe as just a man looking for coffee. He had become something else. A symbol, a reminder, because sometimes history doesn't ask for your permission. It drags you in, whether you're ready or not, and when it does, you only have two choices, surrender or speak. Marcus chose to speak, and his voice carried farther than the bullets ever could.